Hey everyone, how's it going? Tekno Tiger here, and I hope you're doing well. Today, I'll be bringing you guys another Warframe guide, and this time, it's going to be on Harrow. So, Harrow is one of my favorite Warframes because there's a lot of stuff to do with Harrow, and her abilities, or his abilities, combine to make a really powerful Warframe. So, with that being said, in this guide I'm going to be telling you guys everything you need to know about Harrow, including all of the different abilities and how they work, and then the mods that I like to use on the frame, as well as a few weapon combinations. And lastly, I have some gameplay lined up to show you guys how I like to combine everything that I just got done talking about into a really effective Warframe that's actually really fun to play. So now without further ado, let's jump into the guide. Welcome everyone to my arsenal. Now first I wanted to start off by telling you guys that in the description, if you guys want to go check it out, I will be timestamping all the different parts of this guide. So if you guys want to go skip around, feel free to do that. I will have the abilities part, the mods and weapons part, and lastly the gameplay part, all timestamped. So again, if you want to skip around, feel free to do that in the description. But now we're going to jump into the abilities. I'm going to be describing these abilities kind of in my own terms, and if you want to read them for yourself, they're right here on the screen. I also have a little clip in the top right so you guys can see exactly what the abilities look like when they are being cast. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the abilities. Harrow, just like every other Warframe, has 4 abilities and 1 passive. And the passive is the overshield cap is doubled for this Warframe. So if you've ever seen a pink shield in the game, that means that is an overshield, more than you can normally shield for, and this just means that Harrow has twice as much as every other Warframe. And you'll see how that plays into his first and second ability extremely well. The first ability is Condemn. You throw out chains in a line, and every enemy hit by those chains gets snared in place, and so you can get easy headshots. But not only that, each enemy hit gives you 200 extra shields on top of your regular shield, so you can see how that works really well with the passive. Now the next ability, Penance, makes the passive and the first ability extremely useful because it strips all the shields, but for every 100 shields stripped, it increases the duration of this ability, and this ability is a buff. It gives you extra fire rate, in this case for me 50% fire rate, as well as an extra 100% reload speed and lifesteal. So it's an amazing buff, and not only for you but for everyone because of the next ability. The next ability is Thurible. Now you are going to be using your first and second ability and your fourth ability extremely often, so this is a very important ability to make you continually be able to do that. And so Thurible is a channeled ability, unlike the others, where the longer you channel it, the stronger it gets. So you channel this, and let's say you get up to a 10-second channel. That means that for every enemy you kill, not only will you, but all of your friends will get 10 energy per enemy you kill, and 4 times as much per headshot. So 40 energy for you and all of your friends per kill in this instance. Now that's obviously really good because, like I said, your first and second ability you're using extremely often, and your fourth ability, of course, you use almost on cooldown. And that fourth ability is Covenant. Now this one is also a buff, but it does protect you and your allies as well. When you cast it, it makes you, as well as all of your allies, pretty much immortal, invulnerable to damage. And for each 100 damage that this ability mitigates for you and your friends, it will give you a crit chance bonus at the end of it. Now after the time is up, let's say you've mitigated the maximum, or 10, 20, 30,000 damage. There is no cap, but there is a cap on the buff, which is 50%. And so you and all your friends will get a 50% critical chance increase for the duration of this ability. So 2 really great buffs, one for all of your friends, the energy buff for all your friends. This is an amazing frame, as you can tell. It's really great for support, and if you haven't noticed, a lot of these abilities are duration based. Actually, all of them are duration based, and arguably Harrow is the one Warframe that makes the most use out of durability out of every other Warframe in the game. Obviously that's arguable, but in my opinion it's pretty dang close. So now that you guys know about the abilities, I'm going to jump over into the next section, which is about the mods and the weapons, so make sure to stick around for that. Here we are at all the different mods that I like to use for Harrow. Now first, check it out guys, this is a 2-forma build, so keep that in mind. If you guys want to maximize the build a little bit more, then it's going to cost you another forma, or maybe 2 depending on what you use. And if you don't like using an Exilis or don't have primed continuity, just regular continuity, this might only cost you 1 forma depending on whatever you're using. Now, of course, keep that in mind on whatever you have. Now, as far as auras go, of course, use whatever you want. If you guys are using mainly pistols or snipers or melee, put whatever that you like in there. I just found corrosive projection worked really well for me, so that's why I threw it in there. I wouldn't recommend energy siphon or rejuvenation. You don't really have too many survivability problems. Although I haven't tried growing power, you of course can try it and tell me how it works. I just didn't get around to trying it. And so for the Exilis, use one or don't use one. It won't make or break this build at all, but if you were going to use one, I would recommend Power Drift over Cunning Drift, just because you don't really get that much advantage from using range in this build. And so yeah, I'd recommend Power Drift for sure. Lastly, the only other thing that you might want to change is Intensify. This build, as you can see, is going for maximum duration, which is 244% here. You can get a little bit more, like I said, if you wanted to max out your primed continuity and your narrow mind. If you wanted to min-max a little bit more, there's definitely room to do so. But the only thing you might not need is Intensify, especially if you're running Power Drift. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to make or break the build. So if you want, swap out Intensify for if you are dying in extremely high level defense, survivals, or even like level 3 sorties, then you might want to swap out Intensify for Vitality. I wouldn't recommend swapping it out for Redirection, because it'll just give you shields that you're going to strip off of yourself. And usually, now this is usually when you die as Harrow or get downed, it's because you stripped your shield and don't have Covenant up to make you invulnerable, which is usually what you want, because that is the time that you're going to die. With only 300 health, you get down very easily if you don't have enemies to give you more shields immediately, or Covenant to make you invulnerable. That's usually what I found, so that's why I wouldn't recommend Redirection. I would recommend Vitality if you were to swap out Intensify for something to make you a little bit more tanky. Now, of course, we do have Quick Thinking, which is very good and will make it so that you don't die in those higher level things, but if you're not killing enemies, then you won't be getting energy from Thurible, and you won't be able to sustain Quick Thinking if you are taking a lot of damage. So, of course, that's why I did recommend the Vitality over Intensify. That's the only thing I'd recommend that you might swap from this build. Everything else is pretty much needed, or at least works really well with everything else. Now, this ability, this mod here, Natural Talent, what it does is it cuts all of your casting time in half, and I think it makes the flow of Harrow 10-20 times better than what it is normally. It makes the Warframe way more fun to play and way more easy. It makes the flow of the abilities and the casting just much better. And so I'd recommend getting this for sure, without a doubt. It's only 5 or 10 platinum. If you don't have one yet, then I would recommend getting it. It's pretty easy to farm as well. So your first ability, second, and fourth all are casted abilities, so this will cut all of those casts in half. And your third ability is a channel, and this also affects that, so you don't have to channel as much. And so you'll see in the content or the gameplay that's about to come up that I am using my abilities a lot, like almost every 20-30 seconds, and so this will cut down the time that you are casting so that you can do more damage or just don't have to deal with waiting around as much. Now, that's all the different mods that I like to use when I am playing with Harrow. Let's go over and look at a few different weapons I like to use as well. Keep in mind, all these weapon choices are with the fact that I am likely going to have nearly 100% uptime on the Penance buff, which is a 50% fire rate increase as well as a 100% reload increase. So you should also take that into consideration when you're selecting weapons. Now you can see here, as well as in the gameplay, I am using the Opticore. This weapon's become extremely popular in recent days, especially when it comes to taking down terrorists. Now, this weapon is similar to a bow in that it has a charge before it fires. I like to use Vile Acceleration on this as well as my bows, so that combined with Penance, it shoots extremely fast, and more rounds down range usually means more damage. It also makes the gun much better as far as flow. It makes it so firing it isn't a hassle, and I hate waiting for the charge, so that's usually why I go for a little bit more fire rate than I think most people. Also, shooting a giant laser a lot of times is really fun. So now let's look at a few other weapons. Like I said, this makes it so all of your bows charge a bit faster, so all of your dreads and Parises are going to be much better. And maybe look at weapons that you didn't like before. So the Daikyu, for example, suffers from a very slow rate of fire, but with penance could be much more viable than it was before. So take a look at weapons that you might not have considered. That would be something you guys might want to try out. Also, for weapons that are already good, so for example Soma and Sabaris, they're really good weapons already, but the fire rate makes them just that much better. So I'd recommend taking a look at them again. They do both suffer from somewhat of a slower reload speed than other weapons, so this kind of remedies that in that it just makes it so it's much more fluid. But let's look at the two weapon sets that I think shine when it comes to the penance buff, which is shotguns and snipers. So these shotguns and snipers both suffer from slower attack speeds or fire rates, as well as slower reloads. So weapons like the Vacor Heck have slow fire rate, decent reload, but Tigris has a pretty slow reload, so it just remedies all of the problems that shotguns generally have. As well as, for example, the Volker Wraith has a very slow reload even though it has a decent fire rate. So it just makes all of your weapons that you once loved and probably still love just extremely good. And like I said, this is highlighted in shotguns and snipers. So for secondaries, there's not too many that I found to be amazing, especially with penance, but I really like using the axe stilettos because it puts a lot of rounds down range. It just is spitting all of the rounds you have as fast as you can shoot them. It's incredible. But I recommend trying out any weapon that can shoot fast already, but like I said, try out the ones that you don't really use that shoot kind of slow, and this may make it even better. Now let's look at some melee weapons, and I like to use Secure Electa as well as Atarax because I have Maiming Strike, and so I like to use the sliding attack build. Those builds are usually limited by how fast you attack, so if you are using Berserk and Fury on your Atarax, for example, you may want to take off Fury because you don't need that much attack speed unless, for example, you are using something like a script to make you slide attack. I can't personally slide attack with my hands fast enough to keep up with the amount of attack speed that I get, so I would recommend taking off Fury and trying it out like that. But if you don't have Maiming Strike, don't worry about it. You can use any melee weapon. It's very similar to all of your other weapons in that penance just makes it extremely quick and much better to use, more fluid to use any other weapons, especially bigger two-handed weapons like the Orthos, I think benefits heavily from something like increased fire rate. So like I said, try out some oldies that you may not have considered, and you could be surprised for how good they are with the extra fire rate. So that's a few weapon choices that I like to use when I'm playing Harrow. Let's jump over and see the gameplay so I can show you guys how I put all of this together. Welcome everyone to the final part of the video. Here is the gameplay portion where I'll be showing you guys some gameplay as well as going over a few different strategies that I like to use to maximize all of the different mods and weapon choices that we just went over. Now, so Harrow is one of the more complex Warframes, so that's why I'm making a video on it. This is kind of a longer video if you guys didn't notice, because there's a lot to Harrow. He is kind of complex in the way you use his abilities together, and you just saw me do the signature combo that I like to do with Harrow. So you're going to want to keep up your 3 because that's going to give you all of your energy from killing enemies. So make sure that is up. I like to cast it when there's about 10 or 15 seconds left on it, just because it doesn't really cost that much to use, especially once you've already killed quite a number of enemies. So I keep that up, and then after I'm done casting that, what I like to do is use Covenant, which is your 4th ability, making you invulnerable, and then I like to use his 2nd ability, which strips all of his shields. Because something that if you guys are newer to playing Harrow you might do is strip your shields before you use another ability, and in that time you're extremely weak with only 300 health as a base pool. It's easy to get downed once you strip your shields. So what I like to do is use Covenant, which makes you invulnerable, and then strip my shields, and then use that extra invulnerability time to recoup my shields using my 1 ability, Condemn. So that is the general idea. As you saw me there when I first told you guys, I strip my shields, or I covenant, strip my shields, and then here is another example where I got pretty low because I stripped my shields before I covenanted. And so that's what I'm saying, it's kind of a give and take. You can't really make mistakes like that where you are stripping your shields before going invulnerable in higher level sorties, as you'll just get one shot. So make sure to keep that in mind, that you aren't making that mistake like I just did there, and always keeping your thurible up so that you and your teammates are getting as much energy as possible. Now a good tip is that you can use this Warframe to great effect in combination with a Warframe like Banshee or Saren, especially if you're doing a farming like on Hydron or a longer survival. But make sure that if you are with that person, that you communicate with them that you are using Harrow so that you can help them out. Because if they're killing enemies before you can kill enemies, you can't help them out. So you're going to have to communicate with them if you do want to maximize how well you guys are playing together. Luckily I didn't have to deal with that here, but like I said, if you're playing with friends, then you can make a very strong combination, feeding them energy all the time via your thurible. Now that's pretty much all the tips that I have for you guys here. This is somewhat of a more complicated frame to play, but really it's one of those things where you kind of get used to it. You are making sure that over time you're checking your 2 and your 3 so that the duration is still going and still up, because once you drop your 2 and your 3, it can be somewhat hard to get it up again, especially if you're taking a lot of damage and getting drained via quick thinking. So make sure to stay on top of your buffs and stay on top of using your 4 on cooldown if you want the extra damage. Stuff like this is, you don't need so much damage from farming stuff like this, so I didn't use it too much here, but in higher level content you will want to. So that really is it for the guide, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it helped you guys out, and if it did, make sure to leave a like. Always really appreciate it, and makes me know that you guys did enjoy it and it helped you out, so I can make more videos like this. If it didn't help you guys out, or you think you have techniques that are better, please be sure to tell me in the comments. I always love getting feedback from you guys. I read every single comment, like really actually every single one. I read all of them. So again, thank you guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all very soon.